Hi, I'm Nick from UK Coaching, and I've just come off the Curious Coaches Club session that's just been on. And there's so many things going around my head that we just discussed in our debrief that I just kind of wanted to throw down on a video, because there was lots of really good things that we were talking about that we didn't really kind of capture in the actual program today. So what we did in the program was quite broad and surface level, talking about the STEP model. And we talked about space, task, equipment and people, and how you can change those different things and it has an impact on inclusion and some of the outcomes that you might get. But one of the things I didn't think we really got into when we're talking about how we use the STEP model with mixed ability groups is every group is a mixed ability group. Every single group, and it changes all the time because of the state that kids come to practices in. So with a group of kids that I used to work with, one of the particular lads came from a separated family, and whether he'd been with his mum for a week or he'd been with his dad for a week affected very much the mood he was in, which then had an impact on how he played. So his ability in the group changed depending on this. So every group is a mixed ability group, regardless of whether you're working in grassroots, traditional sport, or maybe in the talent or performance pathway. But equally, you have to recognize that you can change a task, for example, and a kid that may have been thriving and doing really well and forging ahead, you change the task and they could then suddenly drop back in the group to really struggling and floundering and struggling to keep up. So you have to recognize that there's an impact on their ability and place in the group depending on where you change that as well. The other thing to consider that we started to get into is how if you change some of these elements to make the practice maybe easier or make it harder to challenge some of the people that we're working with, it has an impact on lots of other different things within them as an individual. So I'll take my sport, football, as the example. So we might change the size of the area to make it bigger, but you have to then recognize the impact of that. So firstly, what have I seen or observed that made me think I'm going to change this area to make it bigger? So there's some things for coaches to think about our observation skills and our noticing skills and moving around the area so that we can see different things. But what is it that I think I've seen, and what judgment have I made that's affected the intervention that I've now chosen to do? So if I make the practice over a bigger space, because some kids may, for example, technically have been doing very well with it, all of a sudden, if I change the space, it's going to have an impact on that kid. So technically, what might have been passing over a smaller distance becomes passing over a bigger distance. So we might be talking about a different technique. And physically, depending on the age and the size of the distances that we create, physically, a kid now might go from doing well because they can kick it that far to all of a sudden they can't kick it that far. So they might suddenly change because of the change of space impacts on what they can do or can't do because of their physical capabilities. Now, all of a sudden, if a young person can't do something physically and they now go from doing really well to struggling, there might be a psychological knock-on to that because their own confidence might drop and change. Or this all could obviously happen the other way around. But if suddenly they start doing really badly, there's an impact on their confidence. And in a team sport like I'm talking about here, their teammates start giving them some grief as well. There's a social impact as well. So it gets quite complex. So my kind of short message within this, I guess, this 5-minute clip is we're talking about space, task, equipment, people as the STEP model. But think about, well, what are you doing and observing and noticing that's making you think you need to make this change? But then consider the impact of those changes. Once you've done them as a coach, step back. What's the impact now? Is it having the desired impact on what I wanted to try and make easier, better, harder, challenge, all of those different reasons? So it's a great model, and I'm not sure coaches do it brilliantly, but it should be at the actual heart of what we do. So Really keen to hear your thoughts. Go away, have a play, and let's make sure that STEP becomes a really solid foundation of our coaching practice.